You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanpodcastnetwork.com, and you can find a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also love to dive into other nerdy topics we all love to frolic about in our free time. The Batman Book Club is also a part of Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc if you'd like to help support the show for as low as $1 a month. It helps keep the generator running here in the Wayne Manor study, and everything is appreciated. Now, thank you for listening to episode number 89, Batman 455 to 457. Just a little more explanation on that here in a couple minutes, because I, of course, need to introduce my guest. He's no stranger to podcasting. If you've listened to any podcast, you've probably heard him. He's a professional. He needs no introduction, but I will anyway. He's part of Disorder, every Disney film. He's part of Why Not Futurama. He's part of the Real Fans for Real Movies Network, and also most familiar, I'm sure, is Holy Batcast, to Mr. Andy DiGenova. Andy, thank you so much for coming on to the Batman Book Club.
Thanks, Ryan Lauer. It's good to be here. Is this my first time? I think it is.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'm sorry it's taken this long.
No, it's completely understandable. I mean, you were kind enough to let me on your show twice now, once while in China, and I really kind of figured at that point, yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult with somebody on the other side of the world. So I think I asked you, and we just knew schedules weren't lining up, and then I just waited and I tracked you down while you're back in my time zone.
Smart. I think you're right. I think we had like some preliminary discussions, but when I was overseas, it was just so hard. And I pretty much said no to everybody. And it was nothing personal. I just had a hard enough time finding ways to keep my shows alive, let alone guesting on other shows. But yes, now that I'm back in the same time zone, it makes it a little easier. Now that I have finally settled, it makes it easier. Now that I have my own little bat cave, my own little recording bat cave, makes it so much easier. So I appreciate your patience, and I definitely appreciate the invitation. So good to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I'm very jealous that you have a bat cave set up. Some point in my adulthood, I'll finally have mine all set up, and what a feeling it will be.
I mean, it's like Disneyland. It'll never be finished. It's an ongoing project,
of course,
and that's okay. But it's in a good place. And yeah, the fun of it is I'm like, I still have some bare spots here, but I need to dig out like my Dark Knight poster for one of those. Ooh. And then I feel like maybe I need to find, I don't have the Batman 89 poster. I feel like I need that up, because right now it's Batman Returns and BVS, which is a very interesting combo. But I feel like I need Nolan represented, and then still that Batman 89 golden oval. It's so iconic.
Yeah. I mean, how poetic though. Anybody who's listened to your show, they know your love for Batman 89, and that this is episode 89.
Is it?
Unintentional.
Oh my God.
Unintentional.
No, own it. Say we planned it this way.
I wish I could. I could try to line some stuff up like this, and it'll never happen. So yeah, I accept fate.
It's
meant to be. Before we get into discussion on today's story, I'd like to ask you, as I ask every first-time guest on here, what is your favorite Batman story?
Oh crap! No, you didn't tell me this.
I didn't.
Okay, my favorite Batman story. Oof. I mean, it is the Batman Book Club, so I feel like I want to go with Batman comic story, because there are a lot of great Batman stories. I start leaning towards favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series.
Sure.
But I don't know. I feel like the favorite, it might be Long Halloween.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
it just checks like so many of the boxes of what you want of a great Batman story. It's Batman and Gotham and so many of his rogues gallery and organized crime, and it's all intertwined so perfectly. Like, it's balanced. There's a mystery there, so there's detective, but there's action. Yeah, I just feel like it checks all the boxes because I reviewed it on my own show years ago, but it's not my favorite artwork, but I think it's my favorite story.
Wow. Perfect. I think every episode I get in something about my love for The Long Halloween, because that's my favorite Batman anything. Like, I think it can top a movie. It can top any novel. Like, I think The Long Halloween that's where my love's at for Batman. So good call.
It's pretty brilliant.
You said you feel like you have to go with a comic. Tim Rooney, that rascal, is the only one who did not, when I asked that question, say a comic book. Instead, he said Mask of the Phantasm.
No, I mean, that's still a perfectly reasonable answer.
For sure. There's a comic adaptation, there's a novelization, there's a script. So I was like, it counts. There's written form, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So it counts, Tim.
Yeah, it counts. My other option was Baby Doll from the animated series, because it's up there. It's like Year One, Long Halloween, Dark Knight Returns, Baby Doll, all in the same breath.
I will, I pick that episode out to watch sometimes. I don't know.
Do you really?
I really do.
So great.
It's almost like I can go back and watch Batman and Robin now too. It's because I know that wasn't where it ended.
Oh, totally.
So I feel like that's where it's laughable, because we got greatness after that. So it's okay. Batman and Robin was really hard to watch until we got Begins, and then it was kind of forgiven. I don't know. So anyways, neither here nor there. Long Halloween, perfect answer. I think we've peaked. So thanks for being on, Andy. And
great. This was awesome.
You can come back anytime.
Terrific.
We're here to be efficient. We're adults.
Brevity is the soul of wit. Everybody enjoy the extra hour of your day. You're welcome.
Yep. And this will be the most downloaded episode for sure in the history of my show. But now let's get to talking some Batman comics, specifically Batman 455 to 457. Now, when we talked, it's a funny story in how we settled on this story. We went back and forth just a little bit, and then of course I got all excited to come up with a whole list to pick from and send them all your way. I had to delete the list and then narrow it down some even more, because I was like, this list is too long, and I have such a panic on, like, you'll be like, oh my god, this is getting really annoying now. I don't even want to come on. I'm like, nope, narrow it down from 10 to 5. And send it to him, see what he thinks.
Well, you gave me like a blank check to start, where you were like, any Batman story, and I was like, that's too much. I don't even know where to start with that. And I was like, well, how about this? And speaking of rascals, someone else stole my one choice, Justin Kowalski.
You son of a bitch.
I know where you live. So I was like, really? I thought it was relatively obscure, but Justin took it, that rotten SOB. And then the other option, I guess, it wasn't Batman-y enough for you. So
yeah. Apologies.
I didn't know the rules. I didn't know where the guide rails were.
Well, so I stick to, I made it kind of harsh, because I'm like, if somebody listens to the Batman book club, I want, like, they're expecting to listen to Batman. So I've had to reject some options from guests when they choose. And I'm like, Batman isn't really in that. I know it's like Justice League or something, but he's not really in it. Let's try something else. So then I give you a blank check and say, pick anyone. You come back with one. And then I feel a little bit more like a dick. So I'm like, no.
You're like, no,
that one's
that.
taken.
Yeah, you can pick anything you want except what you picked.
Except that one. Well, then you ended up.
That's okay. It's your house. You make the rules. I'm just a guest in your house.
It's stressful. I like making people happy, and it became stressful. I was sweating.
I mean, what I offered that you said wasn't Batman-y enough. It was the Laugh Olympics comics. So I understand.
Yeah,
that's
almost
Blue Falcon, completely different.
No, you narrowed it down, and you made it really tough to where I literally did flip a coin, and I don't want to mention what the other one is, just in case.
Maybe we'll do it.
Have some
Maybe
exactly.
Maybe I can come back
exactly
in episode 1989.
Okay, we can do that. Or
it gives me some time to study.
97 for Batman and Robin. There we go.
Okay.
Anyways, but I did flip a coin, and then I said I called this one Master of Fear. Now it's weird because it's a 3-issue arc, released in 1990, written by Alan Grant, illustrated by Norm Breyfogle as Batman 455, 456, 457. But the first 2 issues are called Identity Crisis Part 1, Identity Crisis Part 2, and then the 3rd issue is called Master of Fear. So it's the whole arc is not just one title. And so I was kind of conflicted too of like, well, what am I going to call this episode? Because I like to call the episode the name of the story or the arc or something like that. Easier to track down for people, I think. But this one was a little tricky that way. But when we get to talking about the story, I think we'll see if I'm just, it's pretty obvious why they did that. Or if maybe I'm some kind of detective myself, which I don't think I am. But like I said, it was released in 1990 physically. It's been collected in Robin Volume 1 Reborn trade paperback. It's been collected in this newly released Batman Caped Crusader Volume 4. It's also been included in the Legends of the Dark Knight Norm Breyfogle Volume 2 hardcover collection. It's available. The issues are on DC Universe Infinite and my favorite app of all time, Hoopla, the digital library. It's available there to check out as well. So Andy, for this episode recording, for your homework, which version did you read?
I read the Robin Volume 1 Reborn.
Okay.
So, which I was like 90% certain it was part of when you threw this out as an option, which is funny. This was an option you gave me, but I swear to God, it was one that I was considering anyway. I just couldn't remember the name of the arc, and now we figured out why, because it has 2. So it was one of those things where I was like, I got to look that up later and I'll get back to Ryan. And you beat me to it. And I was like, oh, that's actually one I would have recommended. So we were in sync. It just took us a minute to get there. But yeah, so I have a bunch of the Robin collected ones, all digitally. I've become one of those guys, the digital guys. And so I was like, I'm pretty sure it's in one of those Robin collected editions, but it's also an arc I like so much, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say that yet, but I like it so much that I was like, I have no problem rebuying it in whatever format I need to, because it's so good. And so, I pulled up the Robin one. I was like, oh no, there it is. So it worked out perfect. Yeah.
I was not able to, because I feel like I've been saying this ever since I started the show, that I'm in between unfinalized stuff is packed away in storage, and my Legends of the Dark Knight, Norm Breyfogle, Volume 2 hardcover is packed away in storage right now. So I just checked it out on Hoopla, that book, and that's how I read it. So I read it digitally as well. And I love the convenience of digital. I'm a sucker for physical. I like just having it in my hands to flop back and forth pages and all that stuff too. But space, what are you going to do?
Yep, exactly. I think it's at this point like 8 sturdy plastic long boxes in my garage are like enough is enough. So.
Yeah, that's tough. It's tough. Do you remember when you first read the story?
So that's funny. You were like, this is what we're reading. And I was like, oh, I know that one. I love that one. It's one of my favorites. But for years, I only read the 3rd part, because I owned the physical copy. The floppity copy of this book. I owned the physical copy of the 3rd one, 457, from the newsstand. I bought it with whatever my paper route money way back in 1990. So I've had that since it was released. I bought it from probably my local drugstore or whatever. And I read that countless times, but I don't think I read the first 2 parts of the story until maybe 5 years ago, when I got this Robin collected edition, because the first 2 issues, they're very vague in my recollection. And then as soon as I start the 3rd one, I was like, oh yeah, I know this by heart.
Would it also be apt to say, because of the cover of the 3rd issue, that's why it
absolutely.
stands out so much. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. And that third issue, I remember buying it because I knew that it was going to be the not quite introduction, but the debut of Tim Drake as Robin.
Yeah.
I knew that was what that issue was, which is why I sought it out and bought it with what little money I had. I would have been 11 years old at this point. And yeah, like that was why I knew I needed that issue. And so, yeah, the first two, they came way later.
Nice. So I believe I referenced on this show before that I received a stack of comics from my uncle, which for me was Batman 436, the first issue of year 3, all the way up through like 465, I think. As a youngster, it was probably 6 or 7. After many failed attempts, he tried to get me into Spider-Man and Flash, and my brother into Batman and X-Men. And I wanted Batman, and I had no interest in anybody else except Batman. And
You're loyal.
Nobody knows why. I've always asked, did I have my I shall be a Batman fan moments? And nobody knows. They're like, you shot out of the womb loving Batman. It just happened. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. In this stack, obviously, was this 3-issue arc. So I don't remember the first time I read it, but when I get the stack of comics and, I'm 6 or 7, I'm going through every one just looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember the covers of these 3 issues, and they kind of scared the hell out of me. And I think that's why Norm Breyfogle is one of my favorite artists, because his art was really creepy, but impressionable, but yet also awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, it just had to be looking at this book, at these issues. I mean, 92, 93, actually reading it and understanding. I mean, late 90s probably. But they were, this arc was a little foggy in my brain, so it's always nice to go back and revisit it. And when we did an episode of the top 10 Batman stories, I made sure to go back and revisit this, and it made it in my top 10 stories list, because, well, we'll get to that in a second. I mean, did we already explained, because so usually the third question, this is your first time on here, is, Andy, why did you choose this arc? Well, I think we already explained it.
Yeah. Because 457 is one of my favorite comic books of all time. And so you chose it, but I already wanted to do it, and this is perfect. I mean, I agree with you, though. I think this is a great Batman story and could be held up with the very best of them. And I feel like it's a shame that maybe it's not mentioned more often. So if we can do our own little part shedding some light on this underappreciated Batman story, then I feel pretty good about this, because not to tip my hand, I think it's a great Batman story. And a great Robin story as a bonus.
Exactly. So I think, part of my theory with like Norm Breyfogle stories is Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle. What a great duo to create Batman content in the 90s. I think that they were great. I think because they didn't have an ultimate defining arc or their own original story, they don't have the issues of like that get the individual spotlight very much. Instead, it's just Norm Breyfogle on Batman was awesome. Alan Grant on Batman was awesome. And that covers the whole spectrum. Whereas I think you could almost say,
what a run.
Exactly. And that's why these Legends of the Dark Knight Breyfogle collections, they're like some of my favorite, because it's like their entire run. And it just it wows me now at my age, where I'm a little bit smarter than I was at 6 and 7, and to really just kind of sink into this world that the two created.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm sure there's a little nostalgia bias going on, because this is also the era where I got into Batman comics. So it was in a lot of ways my introduction into Batman, or at least it was the current Batman comics when I really got into it. But at the same time, looking back at it over the years and reading different snippets of this run, which I read a lot of these, especially when DC Universe really launched. I went back and read a lot from this era, and it was just rock solid, issue in, issue out. I feel like there was nothing that was truly bad about it. Like but yeah, maybe the great stories in there almost get lost in the noise of all the good stories they did together too. And so instead you just go, what a run, instead of picking out individual arcs.
Yeah, and I think this one, obviously, because I mean, I've already said it like 2 or 3 times now, but this one definitely stands out to me in that midst, because I do know, I think what helped me is that cover to 457. I kept going back because I loved that cover, and it's like, oh, this is part 3 of that stands out to me the most. But I hope anybody listening, if they didn't go and read this, they track it down somehow to read, because yes, the whole run of this team is fantastic. This to me is the gem, partially because we've been teased with Tim Drake a little bit. He's been a supporting character, and I can only imagine I was lucky that I had everything at my disposal when I was ready to dive in. If I was at my age I am now, as these were coming out once a month, it'd be kind of torturous, I think, of, damn it, when is Tim Drake going to be Robin? We know that he's going to be Robin. Whereas now we can sit and go and read his debut issue through Lonely Place of Dying, all the issues in between, the arc that kind of that precedes this, in which how we get more emotion, which leads into this story. We can read all of that like in a day or 2 days. Whereas at the time, I feel like it would have been grueling.
Yeah, it probably felt way longer than it actually was.
Which really, and I mean, it ends up being earned when, you know, we get that moment. But at the time, because since being a consistent reader now, I can get a little impatient and start to lose any kind of care for a story, because it's like, this is just taking, like Dark Knight 3, there we go, the Master Race, which took all of my 20s to come out.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I was about to say, I think that was like 18 or 19 years that I read through that.
And it's too bad, because then each issue would read fast. And so it's like, wow, I just waited 4 months for this next chapter and it's already over in 15 minutes. And I just went back and reread the whole thing. And I think it's a rock solid story. Like, yeah, see, this got lost in that shuffle of, I am losing days of my life just waiting to complete a damn Batman story. So to bring it back to this, I love the payoff that this arc brings. And so the setup, and we're going to spoil the hell out of this. So if you haven't read it, pause, read. It'll take you 35-40 minutes maybe. It's a nice read,
it's a pretty quick read. Yeah.
And
all in one sitting. Very easy. Yep.
And so as we see on the cover of 455, it seems like there's a bride in like a skull costume or a skull mask, and she's not ready to say I do. And it's a nice creepy image, but it's intriguing. And then as we get through this, we're seeing that there are people with these kind of white hoods, skeleton kind of hoods, committing acts of violence, murder, and other crimes. And then it's quite random in the criminals, the people underneath the masks. And it seems like there's no motive. They have no history of this, in which Batman, being the world's greatest detective, is trying to link into what's causing all this. And we ultimately go ahead.
Well, it's okay. Like, we were talking about the Long Halloween and why we love it. And I mentioned that one of the fun parts of that book is the mystery. And this story does the same thing, is it sets up this mystery at the very beginning of why are these normal people, these normal nonviolent citizens going into these violent, murderous rampages. Because I think that, in the first book, the first person we see ends up, like, I think, killing 2 and then injuring 2 more people. We find out it's a little old lady who's never hurt anyone in her life. Yeah. And the setup of that mystery is part of the fun of this, is why are these normal citizens, becoming murderers? And then they almost immediately dispel what we would assume are the easy answers, which is, oh, they're hypnotized or they're under the influence of drugs or something like that, which I think it's sort of like, it sort of steps back a little bit on that when we find out the solution. But I like the setup of the mystery. And you mentioned the cover. I want to mention, we talked about the cover of 457, which I agree with you. I think it's a landmark cover. It's one of the best Batman covers ever in the history of comics. It's also, I think, one of the best pieces of Batman art. I adore it. Because we were talking about this, I even made it my wallpaper on my phone, and I think it's going to be there a while, and I'm very happy. I found a nice high-res copy of it and made that my wallpaper because it's so good. But I think that the covers for 455 and 456 are great unto themselves.
Yeah.
And the cover for 455 with the bride with the skull mask, and Batman swooping in, this is somewhat iconic as well. Do you know why? Do you know where else this cover was used?
I have not a clue. Teach me.
Okay. This cover was used in the opening of Powerless, the sitcom with Vanessa Hudgens.
Oh my gosh. I never watched it.
Okay. First of all, it's hilarious. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was hysterical. But in the opening, the whole joke of that show was, oh, these are the people who live in the DC universe who aren't superheroes. These are the innocent bystanders. The show's about them.
Mm-hmm.
And they took real comic book covers and used it for the opening credits. And this was the Batman one they chose, because if you look behind the bride, there's a blonde woman. And they used her as like the doppelganger for one of the actresses in the show who was also blonde. And so it was like they did this, and then they zoomed in on the woman in the back and then put the actress's name under it. And that was the opening. If nothing else, look at the opening credits on YouTube. They're hysterical. But yeah, when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, that's the Powerless comic cover.
Wow, that's great. So I know it was short-lived, like what, 12 episodes?
One season, or half a season.
So this is at the beginning of it's the credits?
Yeah, the opening, just the opening of the show.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. No,
so
I had no idea.
I'm sure you just look like Powerless opening credits on YouTube, and I'm sure it'll come up.
Yeah, that's happening as soon as we're done. No, that's very cool. And I love that. It's been there how many years? 4 years? 5 years since Powerless has been on?
And I just imagine them making that show and like seeing the cast going, okay, we have like a middle-aged blonde woman, and we have Vanessa Hudgens, and we have Ron Funches, who went on to be King Shark, and then having to scour comic book covers for random people that look kind of like those people. Like, what a weird but fun homework assignment.
Yeah. And whatever they choose, you could say, yep, I just pulled it up and I just saw it. Christina Kirk is the the blonde lady in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool though.
So there you go. Fun fact about Powerless. Also, if you're really bored, I'd recommend looking at it. I thought it was super funny.
I think I remember you on your show bringing it up sporadically on it was really entertaining. I never got around to it. It wasn't that I had anything.
No one did. That's why I got canceled. This is your fault.
And it's my fault. And then when something gets canceled after one season, it's short-lived. It's kind of like, oh well, apparently I wasn't missing it. That whole but this has brought me in. They honored Norm Breyfogle. Bring it on. I love it. What do you have 456? Nothing.
Right. Although, again, the cover of 456 still pretty badass of, Tim with the Robin costume in the case and the ghosts of the previous Robins, like really cool stuff. I mean, again, I think that all three covers are great. Obviously, the final cover is the best, but
for sure,
they're all pretty darn good. And like you said, like I do love that, of course, we all wanted Tim to become Robin, especially after A Lonely Place of Dying. But I like that Bruce made him wait. Right. Until he was ready. And then this is that. Like, this is a great mystery for Batman with him out there. And I think you mentioned it, but Breyfogle's art is just astounding. God, I miss it. I love it. Reading these comics again just reminded me how much I love his Batman, his Gotham, his, just his artwork is really beautiful. But then it really being Tim Drake's coming of age moment of deciding he is ready to be Robin, no matter what Bruce says, and then how it all goes from there. So it's great because I think it delivers a lot of what you love about a great Batman story. Vicky Vale has a strong supporting arc here, which I was surprised. I forgot she was in this. And bonus, so we're recording this on January what, 5th, 6th?
5th, yeah, 5th.
And we start, and it starts with this great image of Gotham at night with snow and Batman up on top of, you know, a gargoyle. Never get sick of that. But then starting on the second issue, I was like, it starts becoming Christmas. This is a Christmas arc. I completely forgot it was a Christmas story. So it's a little late. It's a couple weeks late, but not, you know, I still have enough Christmas spirit left in me, residual,
Sure,
that it made me happy. And I was like, oh, I can read this at Christmas time next year.
This helps cure those post-Christmas blues.
It helped
a little bit, but
I'm still dealing. I'll be all right. But
add it to the list now so you remember. We're only 11 and a half months away until the Christmas season. Add it to the rotation. This counts. This definitely counts. Okay, so you said Vicky Vale. Okay, let's get over the wall in the sense that this is all leading to Scarecrow. Yeah. Now let's rewind. The characters, I think why I chose this as one of my top 10 stories, because it's something that's very important and I can never change. So I had to put all my thought into it. But this arc has, it's got obviously a lot of Bruce Wayne, a lot of Batman. It's got a lot of Tim Drake. It's got Vicky Vale. It's got Alfred. It's got Scarecrow. It's got Dick Grayson. 3 issues. I think they're like 21 pages each. And just the cast right there is like, man, they included a lot here. And it doesn't feel overstuffed at all either.
No, for sure. You're right. It also checks a lot of boxes of just Batman's world. You know, you got stuff with Gordon going on. You got Vicky Vale. I do like that, you know, this was 1990. So it was obvious that they were like, let's get Vicky Vale back in the current comics. Everybody is used to seeing her from the movie. So they're going to expect to see her in the comics. So they bring her back. But yeah, you're right. Like there's a lot of great elements here. And part of the mystery is that the Scarecrow is behind it all. I couldn't put my mind in where I didn't know that because I know the finale so well, but I like how it builds to that and the reveal of the Scarecrow. I don't know if we're jumping around or not, but the reveal of the Scarecrow,
everywhere. It's fine.
Yeah. At the end of the second issue is just awesome. And much like I love Breyfogle's Batman here. And yes, I'm a sucker for the blue and gray and the yellow oval. I love that classic look. I also think this is the best the Scarecrow has ever looked because it's very classic and iconic, but not old fashioned. Like it's a great balance of like modern, but still like not overdone. Like the way the Scarecrow just looked in the comics recently, like I appreciated like going for something new, but it was just too much, you know, with the big gas mask and stuff. And I'm like, this is just such a classic, awesome, beautiful design for the Scarecrow. And that final image of him at the end of the second issue is great.
So 2 things. First, absolutely on the design of the Scarecrow. I flat out love this. And this is kind of when it comes to thinking of Scarecrow in the comics, it's like, that's what I instantly visualize is this Scarecrow. It looks so good. But he was such a surprise reveal after the end of the second issue, because I think he explains in 457 is because as you'd said there's a mystery because it's not clear cut on any of Batman's rogues. So you could almost be led to believe that it's somebody new or something. Oh, it's a drug, something. But no, it's his fear toxin, but he's revitalized it a little bit. And it's, if there's any kind of little inhibition in your back of your brain or some little emotion that you just kind of want to, lash out, this kind of leeches onto that. And then you just lose it and you go out. And I think that was a great reveal because that's being true to what we know of Scarecrow, but it also is making it, well, this is why Batman couldn't deduce, this is where it's being a little fresh and a little new while still being known as what the Scarecrow does.
Exactly right. It's a new spin on Scarecrow, but not too drastic. It's like a perfect nudge of what Scarecrow does and what his powers are, for lack of a better term, and to do something new with him, but it still works.
Absolutely. And then secondly is this, to me, makes total sense on why the first two issues are named Identity Crisis, and the third one has Scarecrow on the cover and it's called Master of Fear. I feel like at the time it was to build on that mystery. You don't know until you get to the end of that second issue.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it's like, yeah, duh, Ryan, that's everybody knows that. But I do love moments like that where I kind of feel like DC's letting the storytellers have control, and they're not spoiling of like, hey, a new Scarecrow arc begins in 3 months and it starts in 455 called Identity Crisis. Because then you go in reading that and oh, this is a Scarecrow story somehow.
Yeah,
It's kind of like how they did with Scott Snyder's The End Game, where that one was just kept under wraps. And I think Snyder would always tweet out about it and how can't say too much. And Coppola would release just a little bit of art and be like, can't say too much. And all you saw was as if it was almost like Batman versus the Justice League. And then it's not until the very end of that first issue that we get Superman turning around. He's got the big Joker smile. And then it's like, oh shit, this is a Joker story. The fact that they kept that under wraps this whole time, it's like, that's really appreciated, because it's easy to say, this is a Scarecrow story. Come on, everybody, buy it.
Yeah.
And they let it just play out so we could experience it as we want to.
Right. I think you're probably right. And I do appreciate them preserving that surprise, because that is part of the fun, is the reveal.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish, though, that they had just picked a title that could have worked for all three, because it is all the same story. And it's just weird that you'd go part 1, part 2, and then have a completely different name for part 3. I thought was odd. I just feel like they, just for consistency's sake, they should have just picked a name that wasn't spoilery, that could have worked for all three. But it's also funny that it's Identity Crisis, which then became a big landmark Justice League
exactly
story.
It's like Identity Crisis part 1 and part 2. No, not that Identity Crisis, this Identity Crisis.
Exactly.
And then the third
just to make it more
chapter's
confusing.
Master of Fear. I mean, they could have. I don't know what they could have done. Doesn't matter.
I don't know what else you call it, because I got to think about it. But yeah, it's just funny because Identity Crisis, I'm like, oh, that just sounds weird in my mouth, because that's not this story. That's a different one, which is another brilliant story. It's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just crazy that they this is also titled that.
Yeah. So you already mentioned Christmas in Gotham. Another added bonus here, but I also love, we get a lot of Batcave.
Mm-hmm,
And
absolutely,
I do love 90s, early 90s Batcave more than back 90s. That doesn't mean that I don't like it. It's just, that's what I was introduced to. So a Breyfogle Batcave is awesome. You definitely make sure to see that Joker card and Dinosaur and Penny in the shots. I mean, those are requirements, at least in comics. Those are requirements for a Batcave.
Yes.
I love that we see those, but also that's mostly where Tim's hanging out for 2/3 of the story.
Mm-hmm, right.
And it makes sense why he's down there. But let's talk about Tim. You're a big fan. I don't know if anybody knows this. He's a big fan of Tim Drake. This preceding this is not. It may be one of the low points of the Grant Breyfogle run. But is it did you say Obia Man or Obeya Man?
Yeah, I don't know. Sure. I always wondered that too. I don't know how you say it out loud.
With the voodoo, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just,
I agree. Not my favorite.
Voodoo stories just don't hold my interest all that often.
I like them in the right context. For me, another favorite of mine is Gambit. A Gambit voodoo story in New Orleans works great, right?
Yeah.
He's from New Orleans. Batman and voodoo to me is just a weird combo.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah.
And so that's why for me, it doesn't work as great. It is kind of a bizarre random villain that ends up killing Tim's mother.
Yeah.
And that was an arc that I read when I read this whole collected edition, because I think it's in here too. And I was like, oh God, I don't remember any of this. And I think there's a reason that villain didn't really live on, because he's just not the best. And I feel like it didn't quite work. No,
the key moment that came out of that is, as you just said, of his mom, Janet, I think.
Yeah.
She's killed in that. And then his dad is paralyzed. So I guess if you feel like you need to do some read the previous three, or no, it's Detective Comics. I don't know if it's 618 through 620, something like that, around there. But the ramifications of that story, I mean, and there's a lot of emotion that, that helps this gap from when we first see Tim until he becomes Robin, is he really earns that suit. And one of it is that chapter, in the sense of like the emotion and the character building, the relationship building between Bruce and Tim. And this, I bring that arc up only because 455 sees that where Bruce accompanies Tim and Alfred to his mom's funeral, and that's where Dick shows up. And there's even a moment where Bruce feels like, I need to go because duty calls, and Alfred has to remind him, like, no, you're going to Tim's mom's funeral, as if there's no alternative here. And Bruce even says, I mean, something along the lines of like, you're right. And so those are small moments, but it's just, most of us, we never got to see that relationship building for Dick and Bruce, because when we were born, they were already the dynamic duo for 30, 40 years or whatever.
Well, and because the first appearance of Robin, that's all done within like a couple of panels.
Yeah.
So because they needed to get to Robin, whereas, times have changed. But it did feel like this, that when Tim originally meets Bruce and Dick, he wants to be Robin. He's great. He's a great candidate for Robin, but he doesn't quite have the tragic backstory yet. And this is what gave him that. And so this is how he gets his death of the Waynes moment, or death of the Graysons, where it's sort of a spin on that of like, his mother is killed, his father is paralyzed. And so now he is wrestling with the darkness that Bruce once did, that Dick once did. And it was almost like they're like, we can't have a Robin who's got a happy family at home. You got to give him the tragic backstory. And so sorry, Mama and Papa Drake, but you guys are going to pay the price. But I love the scene when he's in the cemetery and he's seeing the visions of Nightwing and Batman.
Yes.
Essentially like really seeing that, now he is joining their ranks for better and for worse.
Yeah. And I just, it all plays, and it's not, I don't think it's ever overdone, his emphasis on how symbolic that Robin suit is. Yeah. Which is what I think really helps him earn it for us as our fans. Of, people have, I think it's everybody, it's kind of unanimous. People like Dick Grayson, Robin or Nightwing, Jason Todd, but I just kind of feel like it's unanimous also that everybody loves Tim Drake. And I think it's because this build up to get him to the point where he puts on the suit, he's established himself as his own character. It's not 4 panels. Now he's the new Robin. Yeah. Let's move along. We got invested for 2 years. I think it would have almost before he put on the suit for like permanently. Got a nice tease of it in Lonely Place of Dying, but then we didn't see it again for for how long. And I love, as you brought up with in the cemetery, like, to me, that's just great visual too. Oh, it's great. Yeah. The strength of Breyfogle is doing haunting, exaggerated for sure, but it's really cool, atmospheric. What do you want to say? Like hovering over, like this just feels like all of it is, I can't think of the term right now, but like coming in over Dick and overpowering him, or not Dick, Tim. It's just scary imagery. And then what's the subject at hand? It's talking about, it's kind of like rubbing it in his face almost a little bit as a reminder of Dick Grayson's parents murdered, mother of Jason Todd murdered, Janet Drake murdered, and all of this and the costs of it. But that's part of Tim's journey, is to face that, I guess, to feel like heroes have tragedies and they can, like, that's their cross to bear. And this is kind of your moment to, where do you want to go? And I feel like, and I'm not trying to read too much into it, I just feel like that's how good it's written from Alan Grant and illustrated by Norm Breyfogle, of like, damn, you really like this kid. No, absolutely. And there's a similar moment in the second issue where the spirits of the past Robins sort of haunt him as well. And like you said, it all plays into the overall theme of him feeling so much pressure and
how symbolic and powerful that Robin suit is, and what responsibility comes with that Robin suit. And I think that's also something that makes Tim Drake so special, is that he takes it very seriously. He knows it's an honor. He knows what it means. And that's, a big part of what the story is about. And to get that sort of a tough love pep talk from the spirits of the previous Robins is also a really great moment, both visually and in the writing. And speaking of the writing, I really love just sort of the through line here of the power of masks and what they can do. I think is really brilliant as well. So even though this is a beautiful story to look at, it's also really smart and has a lot more to say than I think I remembered even. But just the fact that these normal citizens, once they put on this skull mask, they're able to do things they never would dare to do otherwise. And it really speaks to, I guess, the power of anonymity and how it can transform you inside and out. Once it transforms your outside, it transforms your inside as well. And that can be for the worse if we're talking about these citizens who are now killing people, but it also can be for the better, because that's what Tim learns, is that the Robin suit, it's not just there to conceal your identity. It makes you a hero. You act differently. And I think Bruce even talks about that, about once you put on the mask, you do change. You are different, both inside and out. It makes you stronger. It makes you more careful. There, you are now a symbol. And I thought all of that stuff was really fascinating and really smart. And again, really adds some gravitas to some of what can often be considered the sillier aspects of comics of, oh, why would you put on that mask? Or why would you dress like a bat? And it's things like this that dive deeper into what it truly means that I think makes it that much better. And I can also tell you, like, it's true. I don't talk about it a lot, which is weird, but for 3 years in my college days, in my younger years, I was a character performer at Walt Disney World.
Awesome.
And so that meant, being covered from head to toe and wearing a mask. And like it's weird. The things that you can do once you're like, there's like a pretense that's lifted when people can't see your face. And so it just made it so much easier to be sillier and to do random stuff. And because nobody was looking at me, they were seeing someone else. And so to really look at that through the superhero lens in this story for Batman and then eventually for Robin, I think is really great storytelling.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because there is such an emphasis on the mask, like you just went through. And I mean, Grant opens up with like a sentence from a sentence in each issue about masks and something about masks. And then you have Tim that's talking about the Robin suit, which also obviously includes a mask. But then you get in issue 457 where Scarecrow, he's talking about kind of like I almost felt like this is a quick, remember me, Scarecrow, this is my origin, kind of like done really fast. But I mean, he even says it was whim that made him choose the name and image. And then Batman asks, but why the masks, as far as for these people that he's given the gas? And he said, a further nudge toward mayhem. Wearing a mask often changes the wearer's personality, allows acts normally taboo, and then says in the next panel, you should know about that. And I just kind of like, well, boom, there's a connection of like, it works. It connects with everything in these 3 issues. And as you just said too, it's like, it's true. Don't worry about anybody judging you, because they don't know that it's you. Yeah. So feel free. You have that little inhibition of, you want to try something, you can do it because nobody knows it's you. And I think that works so well when you can think of, it's a comic book, it's fun, it's silly, all that stuff. But when they can bring some truth to it, it's like, it only elevates like how much it only elevates it, period. And so I think that, I mean, as we break it down, I've never gotten to gush about this story. But I mean, that's just another element to it on appreciation for it all. It's like, God, that's cool. That's true. Yeah. Preach, Scarecrow, preach. I'll never say that again, but
but it's true. You're right. And it's the it's the careful balancing act of wearing a mask. It can bring out the worst in you, but in the case of Batman and Robin, it can bring out the best in you. And I think there's a line in here where Tim Drake even says that, like, oh, wearing the suit makes you a hero, or wearing the mask makes you a hero, or the suit makes heroes, something like that. I didn't memorize it, but again, I really like that. The mask can bring out either the best or the worst in you.
Yeah, in which, I mean, Tim saves the day. Don't have to go panel by panel, but it's in a great, believable way in what he's doing. And then at the end, I mean, he pulls his. I mean, he says there's only one way in, and this is where Scarecrow's got Vicky and Batman. And he said there's only one way in, but not like this. If I'm recognized, it could lead straight back to Bruce Wayne. So he pulls his hat down, and it's a ski mask, and so his face is covered. He's got a mask. Look at that. But I mean, this is his last gut check time, and that he's confronted with this new toxin, and yet he's strong enough to, as he sits there saying, like, I'm not afraid. And you see this, I mean, yet again, this great art. You see those previous Robins that he's starting to see in the O-Man. We'll just call him the O-Man. He'll be a bear. But then he's got the long pole that he hits Scarecrow with, which like his weapon of choice. yeah, I thought that too. I wonder if that, like, it, I don't know if that's just, if they just were like, oh, that worked, let's get him a bow staff pretty soon, because he gets the bow staff in the miniseries that follows. That's really the sequel to this story. But yeah, I noticed that too. I wonder if that was intentional or just coincidence. And then they're like, you know what, this makes sense.
It just works. Yeah.
It works. But he unmasks himself after he saves the day, and he says Batman, and Batman says Robin, and that's kind of like, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the whole story, it's so great, is that, he thinks he's ready. Batman's saying, you're not ready. You'll know when you're ready, or whatever. And so he's like, no, you can help me from the Batcave, but it's just not time yet. And it gets to the point where, and another thing that we love about Tim Drake is the smartest Robin. That's I think a pretty well accepted fact. And so he's sitting there at the Batcave because he has to be, because Batman's out there on the streets, and he is the one who deduces that it's the Scarecrow behind this. And when he realizes, okay, Batman doesn't know this, and Batman not having this information puts him in danger. So then he's got that internal debate of, do I do what I'm told and sit here and just wait, or do I break the rules because it's, he needs help.
Yeah.
And so that internal debate with him, and that's part of what, where the other Robins pop up and everything. And I love that he's like, no, I have to go help Batman. It's the right thing to do, even if it means I never get to be Robin. So he was willing to sacrifice his entire future as Robin on the chance that he has to help his friend. Yeah. And I think that's really great. And so Tim Drake as well. And that's why he's a great Robin, is because he's willing to give up Robin if it means saving Bruce's life.
And I mean, and it leads to, I really like the page of just dialogue of Batman with Tim, and how him asking him, like, what did I tell you? And he says to stay home, but I figured it was the Scarecrow. I knew you were walking into a trap. I'm sorry. I know it means I'll never be your partner. I'll never wear the suit. It says, and Batman says, why didn't you wear it tonight? Tim, I thought if I failed, I'd disgrace it. I couldn't live with that. And then it shows, because we have moments of a whole Batman, sometimes overdone, sometimes like, oh, come on. And he says here, like, you've learned something valuable, son. Sure, we make up the rules and then we have to stick to them. But sometimes a hunch, a feeling in your gut makes you think again. Sometimes, not very often, and only when it's justified, a hero gets to break the rules. If you hadn't, Vicky Vale and I would both be dead. It's rewarding in reading that, in the sense of, okay, that's Batman's, he's not saying I'm wrong, or anything, but it's just like, you've got it. And he shows a little bit of humanity here of, you followed your gut no matter the risks, and we would be dead. He's just falling out being honest here. Like, we would be dead if you didn't come and save us.
Yeah.
And
no, absolutely.
Great little back and forth. I don't know. I like it.
No, I agree with you. And I also agree that like I feel like sometimes, you know, writing Batman as like the stern father figure it's a careful balancing act, as well as you don't want to go too far and make him an a-hole, but he's not going to be a warm and fuzzy, everybody gets a medal kind of guy. And this is a nice balance of that, of being like, yeah, you did the right thing, you learned a lesson, you know. And I like when we see the somewhat softer side of Batman without going too far down that road, but I like when he is a father to the different Robins, but you know, in this case, Tim.
Yeah, and I mean, we end the issue back where he gets his own Robin suit, an upgraded one that's slightly different. Do you remember by chance your thoughts initially on this new looking Robin suit?
Of course.
Okay. Okay.
Obviously, this was why I bought the issue. This Robin was so in need of an update for years at this point. Mm-hmm. And this was the time they did it. And you know that they did it because Batman 89 came out the year prior, made $1 jillion, and they're like, they're going to do a sequel. And if we don't update the Robin costume, they're going to do it for us.
Yeah.
So let's do it now. It's on us. So it's very obvious throughout this arc that was always the goal. The goal was we need to update Robin's look. And I think they do a great job from a story perspective, giving reasons for that aren't just the very surface level of, oh, his legs are bare. You know, yeah, we know, but to give a much stronger and more dramatic reason for him needing a new suit, I think was a smart choice. And to give him an arc that leads to that is also a smart choice. So all that is to say, when they finally do reveal the new Robin suit, I think it is the textbook example of the perfect redesign of a classic comic book character.
Yeah.
There was no better way to update this look than what they did here. It is a perfect update because it is unmistakably Robin. Mm-hmm. You look at that, take away any dialogue, and you go, yeah, that's obviously Robin. The colors are there, the overall look and aesthetic is there, but it just fits better. It just looks a little more user friendly. It looks a little more protective. It looks a little more modern. It's crazy because this came out in 1990, and if you look at the comic characters that got redesigned in the 90s, now you look back and you go, oh man, that was so 90s. But not this one. This one, they very smartly avoided that. There are a couple things that I guess you could say were that, but not really. You know, maybe the split toes, maybe, but even that I think is kind of cool. For the most part, it's just a perfect redesign, and to the point where I don't think this is my favorite Robin suit, hands down. He got many more updates over the years, and it continues to this day. But there's a reason that every once in a while, Tim Drake will get a new look, and then a year or two later, he'll go back to something very close to this because they've never been able to top this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I like the most about that, I mean, they save it for the splash page, the very last page of the issue. But they put the old suit right next to him. So you can see, like, looking at it, how, like, everything you were just describing, I was just looking, you know, right to left to right, back and forth. And it is unmistakably a Robin suit. You know, it's just, oh, look at the text of the R is different. And, oh, he's got pants. I mean, but it's not aborting the green, lower half aspect to it. It's just expanded to full length pants now. And then the cape part, the top being black instead of yellow, you can think about it and like, oh yeah, if they're at night, I mean, the black can help not be so easily seen, but don't worry, they're still yellow in the cape, you know, even minute details and like that. And yeah, I think it's, and as you also said, it kind of stood the test of time. I mean, how long did it last as pretty much the same Robin suit for how long? I mean, up until he became Red Robin, maybe?
Well, no, because I mean,
or was it
somewhere over the course of the solo run, they gave it another update and it just became just black and red. Which is still not a bad look. I still like that look, but it's not as I still don't think it's as good as this. So that happened, and then he became Red Robin. And again, they've changed his look multiple times, but then they have gone back to a version of this multiple times as well, because it's just hard to top. I mean, I think that right now he's still wearing some version of this, even though Damian is wearing some. Well, no, Damian went to like a gray and red thing. I can't keep track. But anyway, I guess the point is there was a moment in comics where he was wearing essentially this, except with the 2 R's, I think. And Damian was just wearing this too, but with the hood. And the Robin design is so good that like, they're like, oh, well, they can both wear it. That's fine.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And I told you when I bought this comic, I was whatever, 11 years old, or I guess it came out in December, so maybe I was 12 by this point. Because it's Christmas not episodes, issues.
Yeah.
But when I bought this comic, I just stared at this final panel. Like I would go back and just stare at it because I loved it so much. And I still do. I still think it's just an amazing redesign. They nailed it. And yeah, it's the best Robin has ever looked, is probably in the splash page at the end.
I'm with you.
I will say, or ask you, like, there's a part of me that wishes he would have worn the old outfit for the rescue. I get why he didn't, so I'm sort of torn on it, because I understand from a story perspective, is the whole story is him earning the right to wear the costume. But at the same time, because of that cover, I wanted that moment exactly in the actual story, but we don't quite get that because he's wearing a ski mask and a jacket.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I was just going to actually tie it to, is the cover of this. And so, I mean, it would always be a little bit of a bugaboo of mine of the cover. The idea is representative of the story inside, but yet we don't get that image. Like that would always kind of bug me. And so here it's pretty close. I mean, Batman's hanging upside down and he thinks there's spiders on him, and it's the Scarecrow doing it. And then Tim Drake's coming to save the day. All of that happens in the story.
Yes.
Except what Tim's wearing, in which they played him smartly. They colored him in mostly silhouette on the cover to where it's like, I mean, he's wearing a cape. You can see it almost looks like the boots. And so you just, like you said, you expect Tim to show up as the Robin suit. And I'm with you. I would have liked to seen him in the Robin suit, but I'm glad they also threw in that line on, why didn't you wear the suit? Well, if I failed, it's like, okay, then I can buy it. I can forgive you, Norm Breyfogle.
Exactly.
But that cover is, and I know we've already said it. I don't know if I said all of my piece on it, but I always the heebie-jeebies of the spiders. Mm-hmm. Always. I just feel when it's tons of spiders on somebody, you can somehow feel spiders crawling on your body. So when I would look at that, and then, like you already mentioned, of maybe the perfect design of Scarecrow ever done, also on the cover. And then, the Robin, that stance is the Breyfogle perfection of like slightly kind of angled, squat a little. There's so many images of Batman that's almost like knees bent a little bit in a stance, and it's just like almost identifiable, like that of that's Breyfogle, and that's what he nailed with Tim in the window there. So we've gushed about it enough, but I will say one of my favorite comic covers ever also, which is similar to what you said. So that's my last 100% piece on that cover.
But I agree with you, because it's such a great cover, and it's such a great setup with the Scarecrow and Batman upside down and everything. I do appreciate that, 80% of that is what happens in the book, because the old bait and switch is annoying. But my God, that silhouette of Robin in the window, I just wanted that to be the way it went down. But I don't know, maybe someday in another medium they can do a version of this story and we do get that moment, because I think this cover is iconic, and like I said, just a beautiful piece of artwork.
Something as we make our way towards wrapping up a little bit, it wasn't used a bunch here, but the Breyfogle Batmobile.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that too. It's not my favorite Batmobile because it's super weird.
Yes.
but I
Agreed.
like it because it's super weird.
Yeah. I actually have
So-
one of those. They did metal. So before I think Hot Wheels came out with this line, they did a bunch. Oh my gosh, it had to be the middle 2000s, in 2007, 2008, something. But like each era Batman from comics, they did that Batmobile. And I just took them to storage. But I have this and that, and it's hard metal. Like it's a legit good kind of
wow.
oversized vehicle, probably like 3 or 4 inches long. But yeah, I mean, even like the top part even comes up just a little bit and stuff. And it for me is a nostalgic factor because this was my introduction to Batman was Breyfogle era. And so that makes me appreciate this Batmobile more, but like lining it up with live action animation and comic book Batmobiles, it's definitely not close to the top, but I still like it. Like you said,
exactly.
it's weird, which is why it's not up there, but it's also weird, which is why I like it. So it's a
Yes.
really weird stance on how I feel about it.
Completely agreed. I think when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, the Breyfogle Batmobile. It's so bizarre. And I remember way back in 1990, coming off of the Batman 89 movie and then picking up a comic and seeing this Batmobile being like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Is that a UFO? What is that?
Huh?
But now I'm nostalgic for it being like, oh man, it's weird as hell, but you do you, Norm.
The good old days, some would say.
Yep.
Is there any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you'd like to bring up?
Oh man. I mean, I love the way Breyfogle draws Batman swinging and jumping down and what he does with the cape. I think a lot of that artwork is really great. And there's a lot of it throughout here. We mentioned sort of the dream sequences that I think are really good too.
Yeah.
And again, speaking to the Christmas aspect, I do love that issue 2 starts with Santa with one of those skull masks
Yeah.
going crazy. And I think that's super fun too. So yeah, I just think it's a great Batman story and a really great second origin for Tim Drake, where he really steps into the cape and truly becomes Robin for the first time.
Yeah, there's subtle nod to Gracie's.
Yep.
Well done. The Christmas store. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, before we get to our final thoughts, I got to ask you, which I did prep you for these. So
Okay.
Not going to hit you with a hard one here. What was your favorite part? And we're not each issue, just of the 3 issues. What was your favorite part?
Oh man. My favorite part. I should have an answer. I think my favorite part is, even though I knew it was coming, is probably the reveal of the Scarecrow at the end of issue 2.
Nice.
Just because everything is building to that. And if we were reading this in real time, that would be a hell of a cliffhanger to go out on, of being like, oh my God, I can't wait till next month to see what happens with the Scarecrow. So I just think it's a great villain reveal. So aside from, the real answer is the very last page where Tim gets the new suit, but everyone already knows that.
Mhm.
But close second is the Scarecrow reveal.
I'm a little torn myself. For the sake of having a different answer, I really like that 1-page discussion after Scarecrow's taken down between Batman and Tim,
Mhm.
and the whole sometimes as heroes we have to bend those rules. And tonight you're gonna break your one rule. I can't. I think that stands out. So Robin reveal, like you already said, stands out. The Scarecrow reveal, like you said, stands out, and then this stands out. So I was just choosing the one you hadn't mentioned yet.
Great. No, that's an excellent choice. Glad we could cover multiple bases.
We can sleep well tonight. How about a favorite panel?
Also the very final image of Robin, but again, that's a gimme.
Mhm.
I think that the very first page of issue number 3
Mhm.
with Master of Fear, the title, is awesome, because it's another sort of it's a variation on what the cover is, but it also is it's almost like a thesis of what this entire issue is going to be, where you've got the Scarecrow there gloating and laughing, you've got Batman hung upside down, and then you've got Tim Drake like looking just very thoughtful and trying to figure out what he's going to do with the Robin costume just over his shoulder looming. It's a beautiful piece of art. And it tells you everything you need to know about the story you're about to read.
Nice. In a book that has, in a Breyfogle book, how do you narrow it down to one? But it's my own fault because I made this a requirement for every episode that I do. I like Scarecrow as much as I don't really like spiders. I do like the spider imagery. I could say cover 457, but I've said enough about that.
It's a gimme, we know.
Yeah. So in 456, the page 13 is, and they actually do this a lot, like more often in the story than I remember. They do that split. Here's Wayne Manor, and then split it underground. Here's the Batcave. And that's like a Breyfogle signature.
Yeah.
He does that in a lot of his work, especially the Birth of the Demon. I don't know if you've read that one, the Ra's al Ghul. It's Breyfogle painted art.
Okay.
And he does this to perfection. It's one of my favorite, I think, Batman images ever, where he does the split. Wayne Manor, underneath is the cave, and it's the Batcave that you know from Breyfogle's art. And so this panel makes me think of that, but also I just loved it when he did that. It always just got my mind just running all over the place with this image. Well, it's because this is happening and Batman's not there because he's doing it or something as a kid, because words, who wants words? I'm gonna look at the pictures. And so I would just sit and just look at these pictures all the time as a kid. So maybe it isn't the most amazing picture, but for me, it's like that always takes me to a certain spot when I see an image like that, especially Breyfogle. So I'm gonna pick that one because it's a little bit of an oddball choice.
No, it's good. And I'm just gonna do another honorable mention. It's also in issue number 2. It's the image where Tim is trying to deduce what's going on, and he's got the entire rogues gallery around him.
Yeah.
That's I think Breyfogle did that quite a bit in his run, and man, it works every time. I love me that like a good collage of the rogues gallery while Tim is doing his detective work, I think is awesome. So yeah, you got Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman, Poison Ivy, etc. So cool. And it's just so fun to see, all the different looks of these villains.
I think anytime an artist does that, it's almost like I know this story does not involve Joker or Two-Face or Ra's. I want to somehow put him in there. So I'm going to do a collage. It's kind of like recently, like you talked about Noel, which is spoiler alert, my second favorite Batman story.
Nice.
Bermejo got to do that, sporadically in that of some like, here's Two-Face and the old school Catwoman, stuff like that. And I just love it when artists can showcase their versions of these characters, even though Breyfogle eventually would, but prior to this, he got to draw Joker and the other ones. But yeah, that's a good call. Giving Killer Moth some airtime in that.
For sure, exactly. Anarchy. Like Anarchy again is just really a moment in time where it's like, oh yeah, Anarchy up there with the Joker and the Penguin and the Riddler. Sure, Jan.
Yep, exactly.
They were trying. They were trying to do a thing. I got it.
Would you like to see this arc adapted in animation?
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
How would it work for you best?
Well, you take this story and you animate it.
Done. Let's wrap it up.
I guess you need some sort of backstory, right, to set up Tim's arc in this in order to make it work as a standalone movie. So I think that you would sort of have to give some of that backstory, either through like a opening credits montage or not a prequel prologue, like a prologue prior to the credits, something like that. You'd have to at least set up the current status quo of Batman is without a Robin. Tim is, set to be the Robin to be, and that way you could do the story as is. Or, you could almost fold this together with Tim's introduction.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's long enough for a movie in and of itself. I think it might be, but otherwise you could do almost sort of an abbreviated Lonely Place of Dying along with this, so that way you get Tim's entire arc.
Nice.
Or do a two-parter. The only place of dying is part 1. This is part 2. That's the answer. That's what we do.
Identity Crisis Part 1. No, not that Identity Crisis,
we don't call
but
it
still
that.
Tim Drake.
Master of Identity Fear.
There you go. Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, Master of Crisis.
Perfect. I think this 3-issue arc could work. I instantly go to the animated series as an episode. And right before that first commercial break is some kind of like, what? And second commercial break is, oh, it's the Scarecrow. And then the final, third act is kind of like in as we see here. But yeah, like you said, we'd have to be invested in Tim somehow. So this would have had to been of he's entered maybe a season long sort of deal, or the first third is introduce Tim, build him up, second third is this story or something like that.
Exactly. Like in order to like the Scarecrow portion of this story could totally work standalone, right? That's fine. But because this was a culmination of the first part of Tim's journey, you do need some of that background. And so you'd have to figure out a way to do that. Either you make this story when Tim shows up, or again, I like better doing an adaptation of A Lonely Place of Dying to set him up, and then this is part 2, and it's like 6 months later or whatever.
Excellent. Do you have any? I feel like you kind of already gave them, but do you have any final thoughts on this story?
Yeah, sorry, I thought we were doing that, but
nope, you're good.
Yeah, I'll just say again, I think this is great, and it's definitely worth a revisit from folks out there who haven't read it in a long time, because I hadn't read it in a long time, and this gave me an excuse to do so. It's a great Batman story, it's a great Robin story, and it's a great Scarecrow story. The fact that it's also a Christmas story, it all comes together. What's not to love about this? And it's also more than just a fun mystery or a fun action story. There's some really great thematic elements that speak to who Batman and Robin are, and why they do what they do, and how they can do it together. So yeah, this I think works on many different levels, which is why I think it's such a great Batman story. And the fact that you can read it in probably 30 to 40 minutes is a bonus. It's not even going to take up much of your day, but it's a really good one, especially if you love Tim Drake and this era of Batman comics.
How do I follow that? Good story. Done. There you go. Copy paste. All of it. It stands out in the run for me for reasons you just listed. Breyfogle obviously is the instant attraction. I think is that art, is that cover, all 3 covers, period. And then once you open up the book and you really get invested, you realize how strong the storytelling I think is from Alan Grant, and then also utilizing the characters that we all love. This is a Batman story, period. He's not thrown aside at all, but somehow Grant also disguised this as a Batman story when it's kind of like, no, it's kind of actually a Robin story, but arguments can be made both ways. It's just, and that just shows that it's that damn good. It can go either way. It's a Batman story, it's a Robin story, it's a Batman and Robin story. And I love it. And I think it did set the table for Tim's direction. I mean, launched his own series after this, and I mean, he's the prominent Robin, and yeah, it's just I like so much about this story. There's tons of Batman stories, and yet this was one that was chosen for my my top 10. So well done, Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle.
Yeah, here.
Closing the book on that. Two more quick things, because I want to respect your time, my time, everybody listening. As we always do at the release of a new episode, is come up with a new poll question, in which the results of the previous one, it was based on the monthly wrap-up episode of Batman Comics in December. The question was, what was your favorite Batman book of December? 40.3%, 40.8% chose Batman the Imposter #3. Andy, the choices to vote were Batman 118, Batman the Imposter #3, Robin and Batman #2, or One Dark Knight. Did you no shade at all if you didn't read any of these? Did you read any of these by
I
chance?
I think the only one I read was Batman 118.
Okay.
Because yeah, the only books that I'm keeping current on are the current Bat book, Batman Urban Legends, Batman 89, and Superman 78.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Batman 118. That was my pick. It actually received the least amount of votes, but I thought the issue was awesome. I loved it. I read it 4 times, as I think I even said on there. I unexpected. I'm like, I'm gonna read it again. Gonna read it again. Sure. I
Was that the
and,
first in the new arc?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was great. So this poll question for this episode, which if by the time you hear this, it's not up there, hang in there because that means I'm in the process of posting it. The question: which Batman villain do you like seeing Robin take on the most? Scarecrow, Riddler, Joker, or Deathstroke? Now, the Robin can be any Robin, any iteration. It's just at face value. Robin versus which Batman villain is like your favorite? Andy, what would you say out of those choices? Or if you want to write in one, what do you think?
Ooh, so you said Joker, Scarecrow, Riddler, or Deathstroke?
Yeah.
Tough call. Let's go for the top. Let's say Joker.
Yeah. I think I do too, because I think of the Robin 2, the Joker's Wild.
Heck yeah. As long as we're living in Tim Drake solo land, that's another great story. I would have recommended it, but Batman's not in it.
Yeah. The damn rules of this show.
You know?
I think that one, I instantly go back to that one because that too was included in my stack of all those comics. And that had that
so good.
Gosh, what was the Joker's card in each one? Was that weird reflective? Yes.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was the coolest damn thing because I didn't care about words, I cared about pictures. And I would just sit and just turn that. And so I think that's where my mind goes. Although, I mean, Joker's my favorite. Scarecrow and Riddler are tied. I love both of them for different reasons.
Yeah.
Deathstroke, I just thought is more of a Dick Grayson kind of villain, more, but same. Still, I don't know. Damian's gone face to face with him, head to head. So I thought I'd include him, but very cool. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. So I thanked you at the top of the show, but I'm going to thank you again. Thank you for accepting the invite, scheduling me into your busy schedule. Lord knows that you're a busy man these days. But yeah, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun getting to talk one of my favorite Batman stories. And I think it's great. I think there's a quote in Modern Family where it's like, well, we took the scenic route, but we still ended up at the same place.
Yeah, right.
If we both would have just said it at the same time, but we went through some hoops. But hey, appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for the invite. I definitely appreciate it. This was really fun. And yeah, I think I'm very satisfied with the story that we chose. So yeah, very cool to be here.
Go ahead, if people are unaware, plug anything and everything that you'd like to.
Sure. So yeah, you mentioned Holy Batcast. That's probably where most of these folks listening would hear me or already know me from. So check out Holy Batcast. There's also Disorder, every Disney film, RF for RM, and then finally Why Not Futurama. So those are my 4 shows. All of those can be found at rf4rm.com, or you can just search for them by name wherever you get your shows. But yeah, lots of stuff that I talk about Batman, Disney, whatever movie related thing I feel like on the Real Fan Show, and then Futurama. So yeah, it keeps me busy. You can also find Holy Batcast on Twitter, Real Fans on Twitter, me on Twitter or on Instagram. It's just my name, Andy DiGenova, ANDYDIGENOVA.
We are in store for perhaps one of the busiest Batman years in recent memory. So definitely, if you aren't for some reason, listen to Holy Batcast, subscribe, listen to that, because we can never listen to too much Batman. And there's going to be plenty of content because you also expand and you do DC Universe as well. So we do DC in general. We try to always, we try to cover the big Batman stuff, but yeah, of course we welcome the whole family. And as we just did our year in review, which was really fun. But as we were doing that, it dawned on us just how much stuff is coming this year in 22, because a lot of the stuff in 21 got pushed into this year. So man, this year is going to be packed. So lots of fun stuff to look forward to. You don't have those harsh, dickish rules of like the Batman book club of Batman. No, only. You kind of cover it all. So that's right. We're a little more inclusive at Holy Batcast. Yeah. ugh. I'll talk to the higher ups. But if you aren't following the Batman Book Club, you can do so on Twitter at the Batman BC for latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, sometimes even some giveaways. You can email with questions or comments at thebatmanbc@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that on TeePublic, where you can get some merchandise of t-shirts, hoodies, onesies for your little ones, if you'd like so. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, that's 100% A-okay. The actually thing that helps the most is rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts. A link to the rate and review page is in the description of this episode. The more reviews it gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So, for Andy DiGenova, I am Ryan Lauer. Until next time, read more Batman comics.